Hi, everyone. Steve Westman. Welcome to a special edition of the live Audiophile Roundtable. My guest today is a man whose voice and songwriting has transcended generations. Billy Vera is not just a singer or a hit maker. He's a storyteller who lived through every corner of American music history, from the smoky R&B clubs of the 1960s to the topping of the Billboard charts in the 1980s. Billy's journey has been one of resilience, and from the heart too. He has written songs for legends like Dolly Parton, Ricky Nilsson, Fats Domino, produced archival masterpieces for Rhino Records, and has reminded us all why music still matters at this moment. I know you'll like that. So today we're going to explore the songs, the stories, and the soul behind one of the great American voices, Mr. Billy Vera.
Hello, everybody.
If anyone doesn't know, first of all, I've listened to your record since I was just a wee one, especially because it's my generation. I'm Generation X that watched the Family Ties show. So Billy Vera, at this moment, I'll always remember it. So thanks for coming on. I got you on after 40 years of listening to your record. So I do appreciate this. And we've gotten to know each other over the last couple months. This isn't just a one-off, is it? We've had some long chats. So I find this more of a friendly friendship type of conversation, just some sort of informal interview today. So I wanted to thank you for doing this. We have lots to talk about today. And we were talking. I know you have. I mean, a little bit of background though too. The viewers that watch my live Audiophile Roundtable are audiophiles, so they like records, they like music. I want to ask you before we start this: do you still listen to records?
I still listen to them. I still collect them. I have 2 bedrooms full of records, like a real sicko hoarder. And I have them all alphabetically, lined up. When I was a kid, I used to work in a record store, and we would file everything alphabetically by label, by record company, and then numerically within that. Yeah, so I can find anything.
I have to plead here. I've never done that in my life. I just take with what I do. I've got different audiophile labels, so I'll just put Rhino here or Mo Fidelity over there, and that's it. I don't do any alphabetical. I don't have the time for it.
Yeah.
I don't know, but that's impressive. I'm impressed by that. So here's another question too, and we're gonna get into a lot now. I know the answer, but I want the folks to know. So, as a musician, do you still listen to your own records when you're sort of roaming around the house, puttering and cleaning? Is that something you do? And the reason why I ask it is, if you do it, is it just because you're just wanting to bring back a memory, or you're trying to figure out sort of certain maybe verses, or what is it?
Well, I've started to listen to my old stuff on YouTube in the last couple of months. Actually, funny you should say. As
Wow.
But yeah, and I'm just saying, man, this stuff is better than I thought it was. Because a lot of things you make, and you love recording the songs, you love writing the songs, and then they come out and nobody buys them. And that's you try to get past that and move on to the next. But when you get to be my age, you have a body of work, and yeah, I have been listening to my stuff lately.
And so what are you hearing 40, 50, 60 years out that you didn't hear the first time around?
I'm hearing within the songs, the songwriting is, sometimes you write a song, it takes you 20 minutes. Sometimes it takes you years to write a song. And so, when during the period of my busiest period, which had been in the 60s, I guess, when I was a staff songwriter at a music publishing company, and your boss would come in and say, hey, the Drifters are recording next week, see if you can come up with something for them, or Tony Bennett's recording next week, see if you can write something for him. And so you're writing on demand, on assignment. So, you just keep plugging away until somebody records something, and then you wait for the check.
I like those checks.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of folks that probably don't know who even Billy Vera is. So my question to you then is, when people ask who Billy Vera is, how do you answer that today?
Well, Billy's still working with both the Beaters and with a big band. I enjoy that, a big 17-piece band. And so I do one or the other, probably one gig every month or so. Uh, and, you know, I'm doing the historical work has sort of dropped off. I was doing a lot of that for a while, putting together reissue CDs and box sets and writing the essays that go along with those box sets and and then I did a couple of books. One was a memoir, and on the strength of that, I
Well,
was
let's back you up there. Here's the memoir right there. This is Billy Vera, Harlem to Hollywood. There it is.
there.
I
He
had
is.
I had the opportunity to read it. Really good read. So if you guys
Good.
want to read and learn about Billy's entire life from Harlem all the way to Hollywood, there it is right there. It's available on Amazon, or if you want to listen to it through, I guess you actually narrated it too, didn't you?
Yeah, boy,
Yeah.
that was a tough job.
Wow.
Yeah.
So there it is there. So now you really surrounded by creativity growing up, I believe. Your mom was a singer, so the folks know that. Your dad was a writer. Now tell me, how did that shape your
No, my
relation?
dad was a radio and television announcer on
Announcer, okay. So
NBC.
how did that shape sort of your creativity then?
Well, my mom brought records home. Sometimes I would go down with her. She was a background singer on the Perry Como show. It was a weekly, very popular show. She was one of the background singers. Letters, we get letters, we get that. That was my mom. And so, I'd see some of the greatest stars of the time on the Como show. And, you see them right there on that stage and on the monitor and everything. So I was around that. My dad's work wasn't really, I don't want to say it was not creative, but it wasn't musical. They would take him in the studio and he'd sit in this little tiny booth, and his producer would bring in the stacks of scripts that he had to read. Again, not on tape in those days. There was no take two, and so these guys, it was very high pressure business he was in. So it had nothing to do with music, except sometimes they'd have him do what they called a remote broadcast from a nightclub, let's say. Now here's Charlie Parker coming up with blah 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 and all that stuff. So yeah, but my mom had good taste. She'd bring home the music of her generation. Sinatra and Nat King Cole and people like that. So I was hearing good music, and then when rock and roll came in, like any kid, I gravitated toward the music of my generation. But I was also hearing the stuff that she brought home as well. So I was well grounded in different musical styles. When I started to write songs, it had stuff that the guys that just wrote simple rock and roll songs might not have. Something a little extra I'd want to put in. That made it different. It had to be different.
Well, here's what I'm going to ask you. So, like, before we really dive deeper, what does the phrase "at this moment" mean to you now, decades later?
Well, it means the reason why people like you would want to talk to me.
That's a good answer. I like that.
Yeah.
19. Well, we'll get into that. I know there's obviously a backstory with that, but I just want to know, 40, 50, 40 years ago. I mean, that at this moment, I mean, this is why we're here today. I mean, that's how I came about to know Billy Vera, was from that song and from that TV show Family Ties, starring Michael J. Fox back in the mid 80s. Another Canadian, by the way, Billy. There you go.
That's right. He was. Yeah, I forgot about
From
that.
Vancouver, so it's where I'm from as well.
I did a TV show in Vancouver.
Oh yeah.
They killed me at the end. It's called Wise Guy.
Ah.
I played with great imagination. I played a singer.
Wow, must have been a tough role for you. Oh my gosh.
It was actually a well written piece. One of the best written things I ever did.
Oh well.
It was the centerpiece of the episode. You know, my character gets a hit record after playing these dumpy mafia clubs, and I get a chance to do a big gig, and my mafia boss won't allow me. And so I go to his boss, and then all kinds of hell breaks loose, and I end up uh, some bad guys strangle me, and I ruin my voice, and then I go after try to kill him, and the hero of the show reluctantly has to shoot me to keep me from shooting the other guy. The next morning after the show ran, my sister, my late sister, called up and she says, "Oh, when you died, I just was so." I said, "Kat," I said, "it's television, honey. You know, they don't really kill you."
Well, we'll get into that more, but here's the thing. Going back a little, take us back. I mean, your book, Harlem to Hollywood, take us back to growing up in New York. I mean, you sort of briefly mentioned, what your soundtrack of your youth was. You mentioned Frank Sinatra. You mentioned Nat King Cole. What was the
You
soundtrack?
were listening.
Well, yeah, soundtrack of your youth. What was it? I mean, Sinatra, Cole. I'm just trying to figure out the influences to where you got to be Billy Vera.
Well, then of course, I'd come home after school, and just before the Mickey Mouse Club, there was this show where these kids were dancing, and this charming fellow was, having great fun with, these kids. It was called American Bandstand, Dick Clark.
Dick Clark.
And I started watching that every day, and even before that, actually before the Bandstand, I was in sixth grade. It's 1956, and a kid comes up to me one day. He says, "Hey man, you listened to rock and roll last night?" I said, "What's that?" You know, he said, "Alan Freed, man, Alan Freed, 1010 wins on your dial. Dig it, 7 p.m." So I went home and I said, "Whoa, what is this stuff?" And I don't remember who I heard that day, but Frankie Lyman and the Teenagers was really big in New York. Why do fools fall in love and all that stuff. But when I saw on Bandstand, I saw Chuck Berry, and I said, "Wow, look at that!" I said, "I want to be him." you know. So that set me down the rock and roll road.
Like many bands and artists that were your age of that day, Chuck Berry was a huge influence. Of course, we know the Beatles were very well influenced by Chuck Berry as well. So many artists
As
of
for
the
the
day.
Stones, the Stones as well
Yeah.
were even more influenced by Chuck. But yeah, it was he, and then there was, of course, Fats Domino. When I first time I ever went to a record store on my own with my own little dollar, the first record I bought was Blueberry Hill by Fats Domino, and I just loved him. Little Richard, of course. Those were the guys I listened to as a teenager, and yeah.
So then that's my question. Like, do you remember the first record that completely like just stopped you in the tracks? You're like, oh,
Well,
wow.
there were a lot of those over the years, those are records where you can look back 40 years later
Yeah.
and remember exactly where you were, when you heard that.
I love those moments with records. I
Me
absolutely
too.
do.
I remember the gas station. I was filling up my car. In those days, gas was 27 cents a gallon.
Billy, you're aging yourself now. Come on.
Hey man, when you're 81 years old, man, you don't know, they ain't no hiding it. Yeah.
So your love for R&B, I think it's always been authentic, right? What drew you to that sound when you were surrounded by pop and folk?
The emotion.
Yeah.
The emotion of the music, they felt like they really meant it, and I like that. And the rhythm, of course, we were kids, we used to like to dance. And it was just, it was when you consider what came before rock and roll, it was revolutionary.
Well, I mean, we didn't even mention the king yet. I mean, Elvis Presley. I would assume, maybe I'm wrong. I know what assuming does. Presley. Did you listen to his records, or what was your thoughts when you first listened to them?
I realize now that I didn't buy. I had limited funds. I $1 a week, for allowance, and if I went and mowed somebody's lawn, that was another $1. So I couldn't just go out and buy all the records I liked. So I realized that I never bought an Elvis record when I was a kid. Of course, he was ubiquitous, on the radio. So I, memorized all his songs, but I didn't. If it came down to putting my dollar down on the desk there, it was for something that I didn't hear as much on the radio. And then we discovered what was going on at the right hand end of the radio dial. And it was somebody said, "You got to listen to this guy Jocko." And it was a black radio station. And so I'm hearing more R&B. And then they had a guy that came on at 5 p.m. He played jazz. So I got to hear that too on that station. And some of those stations were so weak that you had to drive around in somebody's car till you found the signal,
I love those memories, right? Just don't experience that today, that's for sure. Question then too, like your first break into professional songwriting, was that with Ricky Nelson?
That was that was called Beginner's Luck.
Hang on, the song wasn't called Beginner's Luck though. Just don't confuse the folks. What was the song called?
Mean Old World.
Mean Old World.
I had recorded a song of mine on a record my little band made, and so the record company said, "Hey, you got any more songs, man? That's a great song." So I played the guy, 4 or 5 songs. He took 2 or 3 of them, $35 a piece, and I paid for a demo. And I had this one song I had written for this new girl singer I had just heard, Dionne Warwick, and I wanted to write something for her voice. So I wrote Mean Old World with this new girl in mind. And a couple of weeks later, the guy called me from the company, called me up. He said, "Hey, I got a record on one of your songs." I said, "Oh yeah, which?" I said, "Who'd you get? Did you get that girl, Dionne Warwick?" He said, No, I got Ricky Nelson." And he was all proud. I said, "Ricky Nelson, he's white, man. What? How's he going to sing that song?" Well, as it turned out, Ricky made a terrific record of my song, and it became a chart record, on the Billboard and Cashbox charts. I said, "Wow, like that's how easy this business is." It wasn't that easy after that.
Well, I can imagine. So now looking back at your career, do you see yourself more as a writer or a performer at this point?
Well, I was performing by that time. I was out of high school, and I was performing several nights a week with the band. So I was a performer, but I was also in the daytime writing songs. And once you get a Ricky Nelson record on one of your songs that's on the charts, it was an insular cottage industry at that time. It wasn't the big mega business that the record business is now. So if you had a hit record by Ricky Nelson, suddenly everybody knew your name down there on Broadway, where the neon lights are bright on Broadway. And you could get into to see people, and they would listen to your songs. You go in there, bang your song out on the piano, and I don't like that one. Yeah. Oh yeah, that one sounds okay. Yeah, that kind of thing. Or get out of here and don't ever come back. But then I ended up with a job as a songwriter. $75 a week in a little office and a little piano. And
that's an upgrade from your $1 a week allowance. You did pretty good there.
Yeah, man. Well,
that's a lot of gas at 27 cents a gallon too.
I actually had my one and only day gig at 16. I wanted to make some money, and I got a job at a country club called Metropolis Country Club. Now, all the tough guys I grew up with, they would go out and they would caddy. They'd carry the strong ones would carry 2 bags around for 18 holes of golf. And I was skinny and not very strong, so I couldn't be a caddy. So I applied for a job as a busboy, and the minimum wage was $1 an hour. So that was big money to me. And you go around and you know what a busboy does, so I don't have to explain that.
Yeah, of course.
But yeah, it was an interesting thing. Actually, it was the first time I encountered intra-group bigotry. It was a Jewish country club, German Jews only. They see, Jewish people came to America from Germany about 40 years earlier than Eastern European Jews. So consequently, the Germans looked down upon their brothers from Hungary or Czechoslovakia or Russia or wherever, and they had their own country club down the street. And it just never occurred to me, because I came from a very, a background of no ethnicity. Nobody can claim me because I'm all mixed up. So in my family, there was none of that. So to see that was kind of shocking too, because I was kind of innocent. And but that was the only straight job I ever had, except, I worked in a record store. I worked in a black record store called the Boss Record Shop. And the owner was this little guy, big glasses, horn rim glasses. And it was a tiny store. And so, but I learned because in those days you play the records for the customers. And so I learned what black people like to listen to from working in that store. And I got a more grounded idea of the breadth and length of rhythm and blues and jazz. And actually, the first hip guy I ever met was Kevin Falcone. He worked in another record store. But this is before when I was too young to work. And I'd go in the store he was at, and he to this day, he'll tell you, he said, I saw something in you. He was a little older. He said, I decided to play you stuff that wasn't on the radio, jazz and Latin music. And so thanks to Kevin, I think my music is a little hipper than your average top 40 music.
So you've written for Dolly Parton, Barbara Lewis, many others. So when you write for someone, do you write for someone else's voice when you're doing these songs? Yeah.
Yes, they're not only their voice, but you listen to their records. What kind of subject matter do they like to sing about? Do they like to sing funny songs or sad songs, or what is their vocal range? Like one singer might have a range of 6 notes, whereas a Patti LaBelle has a range of 800 notes. So you'd have more freedom to write melodies that were more dramatic for somebody like Patti. Whereas you'd have to express the emotions in lyrics and with less, to singers who had less power. So you'd study the singer and then write something. You'd craft a song for that person, if that makes any sense.
It does. So I mean, basically, write to move. You're writing to move people, not to impress them. So what does that mean in practical terms?
Well, if you write a song for an artist, and if you're lucky enough that it gets past their their producer and their everybody, and then you got a chance at a hit. You were hoping to just get them out there, and sometimes you would just write songs to write them. Two examples. One song I wrote called "Good Morning Blues." I had been listening, thanks to Kevin, to Thelonious Monk, the great piano player, jazz piano player. And I was really impressed by what he was doing. It was really weird. He plays off rhythms and off stuff. And so I concocted this piano line, and that was my basis. And so I wrote the song over that piano, that monkish, in my 21-year-old mind, piano riff. And so I ended up recording the song. It got recorded a couple of years later by George Benson. And then finally, about 20 years later, I was producing Lou Rawls. And my old bass player suggested "Good Morning Blues" for Lou, which was a great suggestion, because we made a nice record with Lou. Now, that's one song. Another thing was, the boss came in one day and said, Chuck Jackson is recording next week. See what you can come up with for Chuck. Well, I was a big Chuck Jackson fan. Any Day Now, I Don't Want to Cry, all these great songs. But his records lately had been a little tame. And it was a guy with a lot of power in his voice. And I said, what can I write that'll kick his ass, and make him really get down and do what he's capable of. So I'd been listening to a song by Little Junior Parker, the blues singer, called "Driving Wheel." And in the middle of the song, he stops the music and then he preaches. And I said, wow, that's a great device. I could use that kind of device in this song. So I put that in there. Made a demo. Chuck Jackson did not record it. However, my publisher took it over to Epic Records, where they were recording a brand new band from New England called The Remains. And they recorded it, made a record that was unlike anything in my head when I wrote it. It was more of a rock record. And it was great. And it reached like number 112 or something, and that was the end of it. The Remains go on tour, the last Beatles tour, 14 days. And you can imagine what that's like. We want the Beatles. You suck. Get off the stage. Ooh, we want the. What 14 days of that? These guys were so, crushed that they broke up. And they were a great little band. So anyway, 20 years later, I run into this guy, Lenny Kaye, at a record store. Lenny Kaye, the guitar player for Patti Smith. And he recognized me. And he said, I know where there's a stash of your old albums, your old Atlantic albums. They're 69 cents, I said, great, I'll tell me where they are. I'll get them. I could sell them in the clubs for $1 a piece or something. So he said, by the way, I used your song "Don't Look Back" by The Remains on a compilation I did. He said, don't get excited, it didn't sell. He said, but that song down in my Greenwich Village friends is considered one of the greatest rock and roll songs ever written. I said, really? Wow, that's pretty cool. So now, cut to 20 years after that, At This Moment is on the charts. And I get a phone call from Cyndi Lauper's husband. How he got my number, I don't know. He said, Cyndi just cut a track on your song "Don't Look Back." She's thinking of doing a duet with Joan Jett and blah, blah, blah. Never happened. Then it gets crazier, this story. I get a promo CD of 4 songs from Robert Plant's upcoming album, but "Don't Look Back's on there. I said, wow. Well, the album comes out and "Don't Look Back" is not on the album.
Not on there.
So now another 20 years goes by. Rhino Records puts out an expanded 5-disc version box set, um, expanded version of Lenny Kaye's album Nuggets. Don't Look Back is on there, and it sells a ton of box sets. So now the song is 40 years old, and I'm finally
You
getting
got some money. You go for a vacation now, Billy.
the little song that couldn't.
Oh my gosh.
Did.
Well, that leads me. Let's talk about At This Moment. Released in, this is interesting too. I mean, it was released in 1981, so it didn't take off right away, right? So, what do you remember about the first time it was released? And then we can fast forward to what was it, 5 years later, 1986, when all of a sudden Billy Vera and the Beaters are the biggest thing on the Billboard charts.
Well, yeah, the song was slated to be the follow-up to a moderate hit that we had called "I Can Take Care of Myself" on Alpha Records out of Japan. And as luck would have it, the head of promotion got into a fight with the boss of the company and quit. So now there's nobody to promote At This Moment. And the song goes to number 79, The End. The Japanese owners of Alpha Records pulled the plug in America. No more Alpha Records, no more record deal. I'm in the wrong side of 35, too old to be a rock and roll star. And, nobody is interested in recording Billy Vera. So I'm eking out a living, playing Thug of the Week on various TV shows and doing some acting in movies. And one day the phone rings. The guy says, "This Billy Vera that has the band?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "We were at the club the other night. We heard you do a song." He said, "I produce a show called Family Ties. And we heard you do a song that is perfect for that episode." When we figured out that At This Moment was the song. And then he said, we gotta, so I told him where to license the song from Warner Brothers, the publisher. And, the song gets played and I get a little mail,
What's in the mail, Billy?
People are asking, who's this singer?
Yeah.
What's the name of the song? Where can we buy it?
And this is, and just so the folks this is before the internet, so it's hard to find out what the songs, who's singing the songs, what elements from. It's hard. You don't know these things. I remember.
Yeah,
I had to track you down. I didn't know Billy Vera and the Beaters. I had to track you down, and then I eventually tracked you down. This is the record that I got by request. There it is. That's the one.
Yeah, I went gold, man.
Well, I have it here. Look at this. So, title At This Moment, Billy Vera and the Beaters, At This Moment 45 reissue, peak year 1981 and 87, Billboard Hot 1970, number 79 and 81, like you mentioned, number 1 in 1987.
Yeah,
gold, baby.
That was cool. Yeah, it was shocking. I mean, actually the big brouhaha came about the following season when the girl breaks up with Michael J. Fox's character. And then he's all sad, and then they play At This Moment again. And then NBC called Rhino Records and said, "Man, we got more phone calls than any time in the history of the network. People start calling record stores, radio stations. We want this song. It was like a total grassroots, an organic hit.
So it's sort of like crowdsourcing today on the internet. So they're the same thing. People are just calling their record store, calling the radio. What is this song? We want this song. I mean, that's really what happened.
Yeah, and it and I mean, Rhino had to go out and hire a promotion guy. And I went over to Rhino every day, and the guy puts me on the phone. We call up radio. "Hi, I'm Billy Vera. When I'm in town, I listen to KR."
You get all those spots.
Yeah, and you do that until your brains are falling out of your head,
So that's sort of I guess this would be your second wave of success, right? So, I mean, you're looking at 1986, 87. Clearly, it probably changed your life financially and personally at that point. 86, 87 be sort of, if you look back, that's where things really started to go in the right direction for you. You would agree with?
I would say, yeah. I mean, suddenly, I'm on all these TV shows. I did.
And I remember you were around. You were around a lot. So I mean, it's my era. I was a young man, young boy back then, 13, 14 years old when this was all happening. I remember Billy Vera. I remember the Beaters. Absolutely. You
We
were on
did
a lot.
we did Johnny Carson 9 times. We,
How was Johnny? I heard Johnny's. Is he nice, or you didn't really meet him back? He doesn't go backstage,
well,
does he?
he doesn't like to
No.
talk to the guests before the show because he doesn't want to. He wants to save it for.
Well, that's fair. I appreciate that.
But I was told by the crew and a friend of mine who wrote Johnny's monologues that I was Johnny Carson's second favorite singer.
9 times. And that's a lot for the Johnny
Yeah,
Carson show.
yeah. He asked for us to perform at his 30th anniversary for the show, so he was very helpful. As was Dick Clark. Dick used me on all of his shows. He even he's very loyal, Dick Clark, to the people that started him out. Good example was he produced a pilot for a sitcom by Frankie Avalon, who came to fame on American Bandstand. And in the show, it's a comedy sitcom, and Frankie plays a has-been rock and roll singer living in a one-bedroom apartment out in San Fernando Valley.
Yeah. What an easy gig, huh?
Yeah.
Easy.
And one of those guys that instead of tipping the pizza delivery boy, he gives him an 8x10 glossy
There you go.
autographs it. And so they hired me to play one of his cronies from the old days. We go over to the house, have spaghetti, and tell jokes, and blah blah blah. So in the audience when we shot the pilot, you could hear Dick Clark's wonderful laugh.
Oh.
He's the man. Is a great businessman, but he's also a wonderful audience. He loves show. He loved.
Good cheerleader.
He was a great cheerleader. Yeah.
So the Beaters, your band, were one of the LA's, I think, from what I can tell, tightest live bands of its day, right? What made that lineup click? I mean, you had obviously different members come and go, but what made the Beaters, or what does make the Beaters click?
Well, first of all the musicians are professionals. So it's not like, 4 kids right out of high school. Beverly Hills High School, their rich daddy bought them amplifiers and drums.
No, yeah.
Suddenly they're a band. These are all pros. And so the only problem I had in the beginning was these guys were like 3 years younger than me, generally, average age. And I came up listening to people like Ray Charles. And Ray Charles' music was more nuanced than most R&B, and had more dynamics, the highs and the lows and the loud and the soft. And that was my thing. Well, but the guys in the Beaters, they came up listening to Otis Redding, Sam and Dave, and stuff that starts off at one volume and stays there, whereas Ray's music went soft and loud and soft and loud. So I had to school these guys on how to play with the kind of dynamics that my songs required to, so but once they got it, they got it.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
Made this anybody would tell you the Beaters was literally the best band in Hollywood.
No, they were the tightest live band around from what I could find out at the time. And that's interesting because you had horns, you had the groove, you had the grit. So sort of what was the conscious throwback to like classic soul bands at that point that you were trying to
Well, at the time
emulate?
I was listening to a broad variety, as I always did. But I was high on Bob Wills and the Texas Playboys.
Don't know those guys.
Oh my God, Western swing.
Okay. I've heard of that. Yeah.
You would know my friend Ray band Asleep at the Wheel.
Okay.
Bob Wills was like 40 years before Asleep at the Wheel doing that. So what I wanted to do was I wanted a band that incorporated all of American music. And you guys in Canada had what, for my money, was the greatest band of the 1970s.
Who was that?
The band.
There you
Robbie
go.
Robertson and all
Robbie
of those.
Robertson.
Yvonne.
Yep.
I mean, please.
Do you have all the records still?
I have the first couple. Yeah. The brown one is a monster. I mean, you want to hear something that's, to me, that made them the greatest of their generation. Go to YouTube and type in the band The Night They Drove Old Dixie Down, and Levon singing his little heart out on
Love
that
it.
song, man. And it's just powerful, from the movie Last Waltz.
Well, The Last Waltz, that movie is incredible.
I saw it again about a week ago,
Yeah.
late night television. It's
good.
Still incredible.
So good.
I think poor Neil Diamond was sort of out of place there, in the movie. He just
I always I don't know why, I actually enjoyed Van Morrison's performance in that context.
As crazy as it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
really enjoy that. So, okay, so you've lived through every phase of the music business, obviously. So what are the biggest changes, good or bad, that you've seen in the past? Man, you've been doing this for what, 60 years now, right? So what are the biggest changes, good or bad, that you've seen? Is it the streaming aspect? Is that a good change for an artist? Bad change? Like, where?
I think that remains to be seen.
Okay.
Where you go, what kind of income you're going to get. Like they just used, there's a show called The Voice here in America. And they did At This Moment last week. Some couple sang it as a duet. So there's always stuff that's good like that for your.
Did you like it? Did you like the rendition? Did you like how
I did. And that's a song that is deceptively difficult to sing.
It's got high parts. It's got very high parts near the end, as you sing the song, and lower parts. I mean, it takes a lot. It takes a lot for a singer, I would assume.
But dramatically, because it's a heartbreak song. Yeah. A lot of people go over the top, emotionally, and it really should be sung as a conversation. It's between the guy and the girl that's left him, and it's literally at this moment of the split, and he's like trying to deal with that.
Well, the woman found another man. I don't know if he cheat. I don't know if he had it that she cheated on him. I don't know how that worked, but I mean,
there's no cheating.
Just basically, you know what? Found someone else. That's it.
Yeah, and wow. Well, you have the album.
I do, yeah.
At This Moment was written in the beginning from a girl I was dating, telling me about breaking up with her previous boyfriend and how crushed he was. So I wrote the first 2/3 of the song from his point of view as I saw it.
Oh.
But I couldn't finish it until a year later when she broke up with me, and that's when I got that last verse. And pure luck, I had put the song in my mother's piano bench, and because usually if I can't finish a song, I figure it's not good enough to keep and I throw it away. But this one I kept, fortunately, and I finished the song. So that's Michael Bublé, your countryman.
He's right down the road. He lives in Vancouver as well. Absolutely.
He sold 14 million albums At This Moment. And
that must have been a nice check.
Maybe the first check that came paid for my dream album. I'd always wanted to make a big band album at Capitol Studios, and that first check paid for that album.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Michael. Yeah, and you know what? His version is one of the better ones.
So you like it? You didn't did you get to hear like it before it got released on his record, or no?
Told me it was released. I just happened to be on.
You just show up and these checks show up. Oh, by the way, Billy, this Michael Bublé from Vancouver.
Not quite, but I every once in a while I'll go to Amazon and I'll type in At This Moment to see who recorded it lately and who to expect money from. And suddenly,
That's the New York in you, I think, right there.
oh, well, yeah,
Oh man.
we're all a den of thieves up
Yeah.
there, which I could do 45 minutes on all those mafia clubs we used to play at. But I won't waste your time with that. But anyway, I see At This Moment by Michael Bublé, and I had seen, something of him. I said, this kid's talented. He's like a young Bobby Darin.
Yeah.
And so I Googled the song or YouTubed the song, and I said, wow, he doesn't overdo it. And I won't name names, but there are some versions by prominent people who
So
oh, it's the end of the world. The sky is falling,
wouldn't that be something if Michael invited you to one of his concerts and you did the At This Moment duet? I think it would be the coolest thing ever. How can you arrange that?
Yeah. I met his producer, or his
Like,
then,
I think you need to arrange this.
well, I don't know that I can, but I have more to gain than he does. Let's put it that way.
But you're the original artist on this one, and it would be really cool because
Yeah.
I mean, you just said that you think that his is probably the best version other than yours. So I mean, wow, that would be cool to watch
There's
live.
one version that I really love, and he sings it nothing like me.
Oh well.
A guy named Will Downing, who I had never heard of, but I'm told is a popular soul singer. And boy, wow, I love what he does with it. There's other versions, by some prominent and some not. Arthur Prysock, you probably don't know who he is.
No.
He was a big Billy Eckstine style singer, one of those big voice black baritones. And I loved his old records from the 40s. Well, he recorded At This Moment. Unfortunately, it was close to his final days, and he didn't have the voice that he once had, but it was still thrilling that that Arthur cut the song.
So, what advice would you give young songwriters today who want to create something timeless rather than just something that goes viral? Different times we live in, isn't it?
Yeah, persistence, I think.
Mhm.
Too dumb to quit show business. Too dumb. Somebody like me, and I'm not university educated, but when I was young, you really didn't need that, and so I just went out and did what I loved to do, and I would advise people to do something better than I was able to do. And this affects me with women as well. I'm terrified of rejection. So I won't go into the grocery store and say, "Hey, you buying Kleenex or soft tissue, babe?" I couldn't do that if my life depended on it. Well, I'm the same way about pushing myself career-wise. A lot of successful songwriters, one element of their success is they will knock on any door.
Well,
They'll stop a guy on the street. Hey, you got to hear this song I wrote. Listen to this. And 99 times out of 100, it's crap.
well, Billy, it's like here in Canada, we love hockey, right? The hockey analogy is this: you can't score any goals if you don't shoot it on net, right? Same thing.
Yeah,
So the
right.
more from a percentage standpoint, the more shots you have, eventually they're going to go in. It's persistency.
Yeah,
It's being tenacious,
being
tenacity.
courageous. Yeah, I just couldn't be aggressive.
Okay.
I just it's not part of my character. And I think I would advise people to not be aggressive, but be more assertive
Assertive. Okay.
and go. You know, when somebody finally told me years later, said, opportunity comes to everybody, but you have to answer opportunity knocks, but you have to answer the door.
Yep.
So I'm good at that, but and don't be too proud to take an assignment or a job that you think is beneath you,
Beneath you. Yeah.
because you don't know where it's going to come from. Perfect example. I had started writing songs rather, with this guy Larry Brown, L. Russell Brown, and Larry wrote songs like "Come On, Mary Ann" for the Frankie Valli, "Tie a Yellow Ribbon," "Knock Three Times," all those songs. very successful songwriter. And he had approached me in one of the many low points of my career. I was performing, if you want to call it that, at a Ramada Inn for 2 weeks, 6 nights a week. Now, during the week, you're playing to 3 businessmen
Who are
you know,
probably not even paying attention, right? They're
no,
talking and
and they're mad at you because the waitress is talking to you. So anyway, this guy Larry comes. He sends the waitress over after the set. He said, "Mr. Fellow over here wants a word with you." He shakes, puts out his hand, and says, "L. Russell Brown, I wrote tie a yellow ribbon around the old oak tree." And this is the 70s, man. My career is in the tubes. And I'm playing a Ramada Inn to scratch out a living because I'm living at my mother's house because the rent is cheaper.
Did they give you the hotel room for free at least?
No, I had to drive to
Painful.
So anyway, he says, Vera, always call me by my last name. Vera, he says, you're one of the great singers, man. You're one of the great songwriters, but you never make any money. He said, me, I make a lot of money and nobody respects me like they respect you. He said, I got an idea. He says, why don't you come over to the house, during the weekend? We'll write some songs together. You can teach me how to get respect and I can teach you how to make money. So and he was a very energetic guy. We wrote a lot of songs together, not all good, but a lot of songs. He gets a job producing Nancy Sinatra. He said, I need one more song for Nancy. He said, I got to go pick up my wife at the beauty parlor. He said, start something. We'll finish it when I get back. And, so that I did. I said, what do I write for Nancy Sinatra? Oh, she has this famous father. I'm writing lines like, I love my daddy, but it really don't matter what my daddy might say.
Oh.
I finished the song. He gets back and I play it for him. He said, my God, that's a #1 song. He plays it for Nancy. She doesn't like it. And so now Larry's mad at her. He said, because he sees money going out the window because she doesn't like the song. So he says, you got to do something with this song. So I was playing guitar for the Shirelles at the time. And I played it for Shirley and she recorded it and nothing happened. And then we recorded it with this other girl with my band. And everywhere I went with it, they said, love the song, hate the girl. Love the song, hate the girl. She was lazy and didn't learn the song properly. She had a nice voice. So the last guy on my list, the very last guy, love the song, hate the girl, but we're recording Dolly Parton next week. Let me have the song for Dolly. And I'll guarantee you that it'll be the single. I said, well, give me some money. I figured he's give me a couple of $100. So I didn't even take the check out of the envelope when I'm going down the elevator. I was with my girlfriend. She grabs the envelope, rips it open. She says, holy F, honey.
Yeah.
He just gave you $2,500. Well, in 1978, $2,500.
That's for like 30. That's like 40,000. Whatever that would be. A crazy amount.
So we had a good dinner that night. And anyway, Dolly comes out with the song, and sure enough, in the interim, I am offered a job writing songs for Warner Brothers, but I got to move from New York to LA. I'm driving out there with everything I own in my little car. Every 20 minutes, Dolly comes on the radio singing my song, and I hadn't hit it in like 9 years. I'm back in show business again.
Yeah.
And by the time I hit LA 6 days later, it was #1 on the country charts. Thank you, Dolly Parton.
Dolly Parton. Well, speaking of sort of hits that maybe people don't know, but there's a show called King of Queens. The King of Queens.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the gift that keeps on giving, I think, for Billy Vera.
I think it's making me a couple of bucks
as there it is. As we speak.
It's playing somewhere.
So that's if you guys know the King of Queens, it was 9 seasons, I think it was on.
9 seasons.
Yeah.
That's 27 years ago.
27 years ago. I remember that first came out. You're on the opening of that. Every single episode. Billy Vera sings.
Yeah.
So check it out if you haven't. The King of Queens. I think it streams and all. Who
It
knows where
does.
it streams, wherever, Amazon Prime or Netflix, or I can't keep up. It goes from one streaming platform to the other, all these different shows. So one of those things.
Yeah.
So I have some rapid fire questions for you. Just
All
one or
right.
two.
I'm
And
ready.
I like these ones, right? So first record you ever bought, go.
Blueberry Hill, Fats Domino. But
Did
I
that
bought
one.
two that day. That and Honky Tonk by Bill Doggett.
Most cherished record in your collection currently.
Oh my God, that's impossible. I always said that I had two Desert Island albums that I
Yeah.
loved. One is The Genius of Ray Charles on Atlantic Records. And the other one was Mr. Easy by a singer named Jesse Belvin, who had two hits back in the 50s, Good Night, My Love, Pleasant Dreams, and Guess Who. And just a wonderful, wonderful singer who died in a car accident just when his career was ready to go into jet overdrive. And that's a wonderful album.
One song you wish you'd had written.
Somebody, it's funny you say that because somebody asked me, I was thinking just yesterday that somebody asked me that about 30 years ago
There you go.
on the radio. And I said, Tennessee Waltz.
Ah.
What a wonderful
You're
song.
sticking with that one then.
I mean, God, I wish there's 1,000 songs I wish I would have
Well,
written.
of course.
But, but there's something so beautiful about I was waltzing with my darling to the Tennessee waltz when an old friend I happened to see introduced him to my darling. And while they were dancing, my friend stole my sweetheart from me. What a song,
What a
man.
song. Emotion. You got the emotion in that one too.
Oh, what a song. Yeah.
Ooh. Most underrated artist you've ever met.
Underrated?
Underrated.
Oh, I never met Jesse Belvin, but I think because of his death, he was probably underrated. I think a lot of people like hip people. There are artists that only hip people like. Little Jimmy Scott was one wonderful fellow and a wonderful singer, jazz singer. Arthur Prysock, as I mentioned him before, another one like, of course, there's Billie Holiday, but everybody knows Billie Holiday
Yeah.
now. And I think a lot of people mishear the wonderfulness of 13-year-old Frankie Lyman. Here's a kid who went down in an ocean of death due to heroin at 26. But when he was 12 and 13 years old, he had the #1 record in the country with Why Do Fools Fall in Love. And every New York wannabe singer like myself idolized Frankie Lyman. But I think west of the Hudson River, who knows Frankie Lyman today? Music was very regional then.
Yeah.
Like my first record was a regional hit, #1 in Pittsburgh.
Not like that now. Just
and nowhere else. Or
no.
the B side of that record was top 10 in Texas and Louisiana. I found out years later. So and Storybook Children, the first hit I ever sang on. Unlike most records, which ferment in the great elsewhere, and then they come to New York, Storybook Children took off in New York first. So it was like the opposite of the way things usually happen or are supposed to happen, I suppose.
So Billy, finish this sentence. Music is
it's the thing that through which we express our inner emotions and outer emotions as well. Yeah, the means of expression. I tell people that want to be like saxophone soloists, let's say, that you just don't play a bunch of notes over the chord changes of a song. You should not attempt to solo on a song unless you know the original melody and unless you know the original words. Well, I'm a saxophone player. I don't have to sing the words. No, but you have to know them. You have to know the story of the song. You got to know what the emotion you're supposed to be expressing and communicating is. So, dude, learn the words of the song, man.
Well, Billy Vera, thank you so much for joining the live Audiophile Roundtable today. Hopefully you're a fan of the show. Maybe you can come on as a panelist one time with some of my guests and talk about some of the records, bring some of your records up for the folks to see. I think that'd be really cool.
It might be fun. Yeah.
Let's do it. Oh,
Thanks
you're in. You're in.
Thanks so much.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Billy.
We'll see you. This will come on within days, I'm sure.
That's right. I'll see you again. Thank you.
Okay.